but I wish everyone at some point can just, all the pronouns and just go there and just stick with names. But anyway, so yeah, getting back to that. So I hope that, my story is, everyone has their own story. In regards to my story, in regards to, being transgender and my experiences, even in the health industry and even in the employment industry. I have experienced discrimination, but a little bit about my background. So I started Urban Trans Women because in my journey as a transgender woman of color, there were no resources for anything. And so when you don't have resources, for me, you kind of just try to make a way out of nowhere, and that's what I've learned. And in my journey, in my survival mode, I'm a survivor of drugs, the sex industry. I am HIV positive, but I'm not detectable. I'm not defined by any of these things, and I'm very happy to share them because I think it's important to understand for anyone out that doesn't understand what being transgender is or the struggles. You kind of just see, I'm living proof. If you have resources and opportunity, you can still live. And I didn't even think I'd make it to be 40, but I'll be 50 in August. So I'm very, very blessed and very grateful. So, a little bit about myself. As I said, I'm a survivor of, drug industry. I'm a survivor of the sex industry. And having resources and being able to walk into a place of employment, health, I can remember a time when I reached out to going into like a hospital. I can tell you one particular experience I had. I went into the emergency room and I was being assisted by a doctor, Dr. Ebony, and this is in Colorado, and I present well. And he was all on board with assisting me and helping me. And as soon as he found out I was transgender, he sent me home with Advil. And I don't know if I had what the issue was, but I was like in major pain. Like I was sick, throwing up, and I just felt like I was gonna die. But once I opened up about my being transgender, he totally changed how he would interact with me. And that happens a lot in the community. And that frustration and that fear, it keeps the community from coming in for care. We're gonna try to find care where else other places are just not coming at all, and that raises the numbers of the people that are infected or just healthcare in general. If you don't feel comfortable coming into an establishment, you're not gonna reach out for assistance, and that's in healthcare, that's in employment. The goal is to try to set a community up to thrive rather than survive. And when you're in survival mode, you're not really successful, and so that's the point of these trainings. And now being transgender seems to be the new black, but it's really not. It's been around forever, which you'll see in this little bit of history in regards to transgender issues. So I tell it from my point of view. My story is a little different. I wasn't the one that was in school that was bullied for being different. I chose to be oblivious to that because no one is going to tell me who I can and cannot be. So my experience in regards to that, I wasn't the kid that was in school for being bullied because I was different. In fact, I was pretty popular and I stood my ground. But not everyone is lucky, or not everyone sees that. And with my current position now at BMC, much more close in the community and meeting individuals that are actually going through the change. It's interesting because society has put in the heads of the community that having that operation is huge, and that's really a small piece of it. Being able to, what do you do in the meantime and in between time while you're waiting for that? You have to know who you are. You have to be able to move through the world. You have to be able to present well. And that's what it's about, knowing yourself and being comfortable with yourself and not letting anything outside of yourself get to you to where you're not able to live your best life no matter who you are. So this is about being transgender, but the reality is this is anyone and everyone, and you should just be who you are. So I hope I gave you a little information into information inside of my story. I don't want to go too far into it because you don't have that much time. But as I said, I do want you guys to interact and ask questions in regards to myself and the presentation. So this is a little bit about my story, which I tell quite often, and kind of get tired of telling it, but hey, gotta give you some insight into who I am. So, here we are. The term transgender, as you know, people whose gender identity is different from their sex, and basically being trans is you want to make sure that the inside matches is what's on the outside. Have you guys encountered people that are transgender outside of myself, and what are your thoughts and how do you feel, and what are your questions about that? Any thoughts, questions? Anyone?
Well, I can start. So I have a number of patients who are transgender. What I find most difficult sometimes is just asking gender questions. And I guess part of it is worrying about offending people that are cisgendered. I know that's a little bit, that may not be a huge concern, but I still worry about offending people that may be cisgender and questioning their own gender. And, you know, it's sort of the same for sexual orientation too. It's like, you know, if I have someone that's heterosexual in front of me, you know, I have gotten pushback when I say, well, are your partners men, women, or both? And they'll look at you and be like, well, you know, women, of course. But I sort of get some of the same pushback when I ask about gender occasionally. It makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, frankly, if I'm questioning someone's gender when they clearly present as one way or the other.
Great.
So how to ask those questions, and I guess how to also anticipate any pushback, whether it be those sense, and how to deal with that as well.
So you're uncomfortable asking. Well, I always say, you know, first of all, name is a great way to start, you know, start with the name. And it's unfortunate that it is uncomfortable because it doesn't have to be an uncomfortable situation, but I understand why. But the reality is, before all of this came about and everyone was doing all these trainings, how did you interact with someone that you see on the street? I think society puts in our head, and then when you come and encounter with someone, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? There's just panic mode. It's really pretty simple, and it's just a simple introduction. First of all, you start by their name, and it's okay to ask, you know, what are your pronouns? How would you like to be addressed? And you can't, the community itself, within my community, we can't be offended because it's unfamiliar territory for a lot of people. So you have to be okay with the questions, and I can understand why you would think it would be offensive. But you have to ask what you don't know. It's all in the way you ask, in the delivery, you know. So it's okay to ask questions. How would you like to be addressed? What are your pronouns, which drives me nuts, but someone that comes in and their name is Dave, but they look like Doris, you know, you just have to ask. It's better than guessing, and there's a way to ask, and it's pretty much an easy question. What are your pronouns? How would you like to be addressed? You know, and just making them feel comfortable, and asking those questions makes anyone feel comfortable, and makes them feel like, okay, this is an inviting environment, I can feel comfortable, but not asking the question in a way of, what are you? Don't ask the question in a way where it's uncomfortable. Make them feel like it's okay to answer, and kind of go from there. Hi, you have a question?
I have a question. So, about the pronouns. So I often ask that question, but I feel like there are individuals who don't, who hate that question too. So sort of how do we get around asking the question, because I think it's important, but then also not, you even said, I hate that question. I hate when people say, what are your pronouns? I hate that. But we still have to ask the question. Is there another way to do it besides just asking, what's your name? What would you like to be called?
Well, okay, when I say hate that question, it's not in between the pronouns in general. I just think it's just so many on these labels. That's where I'm coming from with it. Okay. So it doesn't bother me to be asked that. I'm just saying in regards to the labels in general. But you just ask, how would you like to be addressed? What are the pronouns you go by? Regardless if you're confused and their name may be one thing, but they're presenting another way, you have to ask, and it's okay. And maybe they're not offended, and if they are, you can easily explain, well, I don't mean to offend you, but I'm asking so I can better assist you. Okay. And that's just the reality of it. And, the community shouldn't be offended, and someone outside of the community should feel comfortable asking. And that's just the way it is. That's the reality of it. We're learning. This is all new to a lot of people. So you don't know. If you don't know, you ask.